Buffalo Calf drummers greet visitors at a change in command ceremony at the Ochi Healing Lodge. It's held each time a new warden arrives. Here at the lodge, wardens are called Kikawina, or mother.
And in the Aboriginal community, we have much more of a restorative justice approach, trying to help people and resolve issues rather than isolate and control, right? So that's, one of the things we did here a lot was we did a lot of mediation.
The 40-inmate Healing Lodge is unlike any other prison in Canada. The idea was born out of the groundbreaking 1990 government report called Creating Choices, which recommended a prison for female Aboriginal inmates.
And I think the vision that you saw, or that was thought of in Creating Choices, is what we see today. They have here made it a reality, and I think we should all be incredibly proud of that and the successes they've seen.
The Healing Lodge signaled a major change in the women's prison system in Canada. A violent riot at the Kingston Prison for Women in 1994 prompted an inquiry from Supreme Court Justice Louise Arbour. She called for P4W to shut down and for 5 new prisons to be built across Canada. The new prisons were designed to focus on rehabilitation. Minimum and medium security women live in cottages, not cells.
Corrections is particularly women's corrections in Canada. We are known to be one of the best in the world. All of our programs, all of our interventions are all based in research. They're well recognized. We have lots of visitors that come around the world to look at our facilities, to look what we're doing. It is a different approach.
Well, if we continue on the path that we're going to have increased populations of women in prison.
Kelly Hannah Moffat is a professor of sociology and criminology. She believes women become criminals for different reasons than men.
Most of them are women who have come from histories of victimization, trauma, and abuse. Many of them are mothers of they're single parents and sole care providers of those children. Many have issues with substance abuse, both alcohol and drug abuse. And a large proportion of them, or disproportionate number of women in prison, are Aboriginal women. And many of them struggle with unemployment, underemployment, and issues of poverty prior to incarceration.
That one is all women who are now dead.
Kim Pate is surrounded by images of women inside the criminal justice system. In her work with the advocacy group, the Elizabeth Fry Society, Pate says the new prisons are plagued with their own problems.
However, once you go into the prisons, there are prisons within the prison. There are segregated maximum security units that are more secure than any maximum security prisons for men in this country. And then in segregation, women are held in more secure settings even than those, and predominantly women with mental health issues, some with intellectual disabilities as well. So we see a very secure environment instead of what was proposed 20 years ago for women, which was to have more dynamic security. The presumption at that time was most women could be housed in minimum security settings with more human intervention and less need for any kind of, eye-in-the-sky cameras, razor wire, all of the things that we see now.
A growing chorus, including Canada's corrections watchdog, think it's getting worse. What are the biggest problems in women's institutions right now?
Crowding. Crowding, the lack of access to programs, lack of access to treatment. Women's institutions are bursting at the seams.
As we become more sort of blindly punitive, we end up spending a whole lot of money on and resources into an institution that has no proven success.
It costs taxpayers over $200,000 a year to incarcerate female offenders, compared to an average of about $110,000 for men. The Harper government plans to spend $2 billion to expand Canada's federal prison system. Public Safety Minister Vic Taves says his priority is keeping Canadians safe.
I know that some are concerned about prisoner-on-prisoner violence inside prisons. I'm concerned about that. But my primary concern is public safety. And once these individuals are off the street and in prison, my second concern becomes the safety of the guards. And thirdly is the interests of the prisoners.
I would characterize our system now as challenged and I think it's headed in a very dangerous, costly, and ineffective direction.
Vancouver MP Don Davies is the former NDP public safety critic.
It saddens me that we're taking a simple US-style approach that fails to recognize that these are human beings, and their behavior can be corrected if they're given some assistance.
Well, I can tell you for certain that a provincial jail will never better a person.
Carol Ann Borens got out of prison in May 2010. She's been in on fraud and drug charges. Now she is out on parole, but doesn't see much hope for her future success.
Prison is for certain people, don't get me wrong, but I think non-violent offenders and non-harmful, like if you're not hurting people and property and all that stuff, like if you're doing crimes like for survival like mine, or if you've made a mistake, like it's obvious you're a normal person, you've lived 40 years of your life living one way and you make one mistake, does that rule out all that 40 years of living a good life? You know, they need to look at the crime more than they do.
The statistics alone are pretty telling.
Aboriginal justice critic Michelle Mann says a crisis is looming. Almost 1 in 3 federally incarcerated women are Aboriginal.
Even though the overall numbers are small, the disproportionate representation is quite staggering.
It's a pretty gloomy picture.
Since P4W closed, the number of women serving federal sentences has ballooned by 40%. Several of Canada's 6 women's prisons are filled over capacity. They are also becoming more dangerous. Over the past 2 years, assaults on staff in women's prisons more than doubled. Self-inflicted injuries more than tripled. Brian E. Baxter says the solution isn't to build more prisons.
You know, if you want to reduce crime, you need to understand the precursors to crime and what is important in successful reintegration to reduce reoffending.
And in this gift,
the change in command ceremony at the Okima-Ochi Healing Lodge includes giving the new warden a ceremonial blanket. But critics charge it will take a change in government philosophy and not just more prisons to improve the lives of female inmates. Laura Stone, CalgaryHerald.com, Maple Creek, Saskatchewan.